Hey everyone, welcome back to Pine Hollow Auto Diagnostics. Today I'm at a local shop here in State College. We're working on a 2014 Volkswagen Jetta with a 1.8 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. And this thing is acting weird. When you start it up, it runs great, it runs smooth. Now I ran it for about a minute and it just started acting up like crazy, misfiring. Here's the codes that I pulled out of it. This was from, I guess, a previous test that the shop owner did here, but we have all 4 misfires detected, P0300, but no real other clues other than just poor running. So this is OBD2 generic mode, which for European vehicles is sometimes the easiest place to start and the most straightforward. So let's just look at some preliminary data parameters. Key is on. Well, let's push button start. So let's customize this list, and this system does not appear to have a mass airflow sensor. Let's see here. So absolute throttle position, commanded throttle position. Let's pick that. Fuel system 1, opener closed loop, intake air temp, intake pressure. We'll put baro in there. Short term, long term. Fuel trims, ignition advance, why not? And voltage, bank 1 sensor 2, and then there's an equivalence ratio, bank 1 sensor 1. Okay, so I think that's just about everything that we need. Alright, so baro is good, 28.3 inches of mercury. Intake air is pretty reasonable, 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Throttle position, if I press the gas, floor it, it's 85, release it, 18. Okay, nothing out of the ordinary. So let's start it up. Right now, running pretty decent. And here it goes. RPMs are just jump, 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 jump. The whole car is shaking. Our intake vacuum is rather poor, but is that because of poor running, or is that the cause of our poor running? So I'm going to open up the throttle a little bit here. So it runs pretty smooth at 3,000. Our intake vacuum, is normal now, about 9 inches of mercury. It's in closed loop. Our fuel trims seem to be doing okay, within 10%. And I'm going to let it off and let it get back to idle here. So that's a good number right there, about 9 to 10 inches of mercury absolute pressure. So it's about 20 inches of vacuum. And now, here it goes again. Misfiring. Whoa, 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 whoa. It's almost sounds like an EGR valve is stuck open, but I don't think this thing has an EGR valve. What other things can we check? There's probably timing, variable valve timing on this thing.
Nope.
No variable valve timing?
It does now. Yeah, it does on one cam.
Right. Okay. Then the ignition timing advance is going all over the place. I'm going to rev it up a little more. It's still around 2,000. It's still lopey. And at 3,000, it gets better. Shake, 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 shake. Does not like it. Just runs really, really poorly at idle. Okay. So in this case, OBD2 mode might not be enough. I want to go into Volkswagen specific and actually, you know, check these camshafts to see if one of them is like stuck advanced or something. Check out O2 voltage bank 1 sensor 2. It's pegged rich. So again, it's almost like an EGR valve being stuck open in terms of, you know, the intake. If the map sensor sees a high number, remember like that Saturn we just did recently? It's just overfueling itself, and look what happens to our downstream bank 2 sensor there. It just gets peg rich. This thing doesn't know if it's in closed loop or open loop. I mean, it's trying to take fuel away, kind of. Yeah, it just doesn't quite know what to do with itself. So let's dive under the hood and do a couple visual checks under there. All right, what we're gonna do now is check for crankcase vacuum. See if there's a problem with this fancy PCV system. I know Eric O just recently did a video on a Volkswagen that had that issue, but all right, Jim, go ahead, fire it up. That's definitely a problem. That's a lot of vacuum in the crankcase. Yeah, we don't like that. Put a gauge on there. Oh, it stalled it out, huh? Oh, about 2 or 3 inches of mercury. I would say that's a lot. You would think it'd be sucking in oil like crazy somewhere. Now, is that normal? Don't really know right now. You trust this gauge, right?
Yeah, that one's pretty good.
Okay.
About 8.
Well, this is inches of mercury here. Oh, vacuum right here, right? Yeah. So yeah, about 8 inches of mercury. I'd say that's a lot. And it definitely changes the way the engine runs. So let's see, release that. So it's still loping like crazy. Let's look at our data with that hole unplugged. Uncovered. Running like garbage. Let's see, current data. Get back in here. Definitely a, you know, entire engine problem. It's not like a single cylinder misfire. Let's see here, deselect all. We just want our map. Short term, long term, bank 1 sensor 2. Okay, let's see that. So we're pegged rich there. Our intake pressure's 20. Put the dipstick back in, Jim. We'll probably make it stall out. That's really poor intake vacuum. You want to put that dipstick back in? You want to put the dipstick back in the hole? Let's see what happens to our map. Feather the throttle a little bit there. So no real changes And I can't believe our equivalence ratio is good. It's in closed loop, and the fuel trims seem pretty okay. But look at our downstream sensor, it's pegged out. Wow, this is actually a really good case study right now. Really neat. I'm gonna raise the RPMs a little bit. I don't like that this guy is just stuck rich. I mean, if the equivalence ratio was on the money, it would not be running this poorly, I don't think. So I do want to check this timing advance. Let's just see what codes it's set again. Save that. Okay, exit out of here. And the shop owner says that it can only run for about half an hour, and then it smooths out and it's perfect. So we do have only a limited time frame here. Let's see, display trouble codes. It's just gonna give us misfire codes, I'm sure. Oh, no codes. Imagine that. All right, so this is definitely not a trivial problem. So this modern piece of German engineering, I won't call it Euro trash because that does upset some people, but look at all the systems that it has. It's direct injected, has an air pump, obviously converters, wideband O2 sensor, a turbocharger, and CAC. I'm not exactly sure what that stands for, but just a lot of systems that are all interconnected, so there are a lot of variables, and the logic here does not follow, you know, usual logic like you would think. So I guess we need a plan of attack, and just looking at the preliminary data, we're seeing that the downstream O2 sensor is pegged rich. The map is, we have a high reading here, almost like an EGR, vacuum leak, but we don't have an EGR valve, so that's not, not the issue. However, the wide range lambda equivalence, wideband sensor is showing that we're about stoichiometric, but I don't think that's the case based on how the engine's running and based on the downstream O2 sensor. So what I want to do is just unplug the upstream wideband sensor and see how it runs, look at the data, and see what happens. Looking at our sensor locations, this is actually the downstream, even though it's in front of this big secondary cat, and the upstream, it's right in the turbocharger, believe it or not, right there, and the plug seems to be somewhere up top. So I think we're going to let the car back down and do our checks from above if we can get to that plug. So it was right in front of our face. Here's the connector for the lambda sensor, and you can kind of see it. Here's the wire for it. So what I want to do is, well, let's just run it, make sure it's still acting up, because if it warmed up enough, it could be good. So you want to start it up, Jim? We'll look at the data. You can just reach in there with your hands and.
I got both of them.
Oh, okay. All right, so we got open loop. And should be going to closed loop soon. Closed loop, okay. See, short term, long term. So I guess the bank 1 sensor 2 hasn't heated up yet. We're still at 1.3 volts. So right now it's running perfect, right?
Yep.
And just to make sure, we pop the dipstick out. There's still the same amount of vacuum there. We can plop in our vacuum gauge. So that did not change, so I don't suspect a PCV valve or a crankcase ventilation problem, just because it's running great now and we still have the same pretty high vacuum reading on the crankcase. Plug that hole. I guess that's the connector for our intake camshaft phaser. We can explore that too, see if there's a timing problem, but we should have set codes for that. Right now it's warmed up and happy, right? And our bank 1 sensor 2 is still high, but everything else looks perfect. So now we either have to let the car cool down for a few hours and try again, or try to go to the bidirectional controls and maybe advance that camshaft and see if the symptoms are similar. If it's like an advanced timing problem. Again, we should have set codes for that, but you never know. Looking at some history codes. So the first time this car came in was almost 2 months ago. It was in May. And let's go all the way down. Wait. Okay, these are the latest codes. This is today. So if we go up, if we can just drag this cursor up, or is it going to make me scroll all the way? Why doesn't Snap-on just incorporate the little scrolly thing? Alright, so May 4th, engine management, fuel pressure regulator, control circuit code. Then we do have crankshaft position, camshaft position correlation. That's interesting. Bank 1 sensor A, camshaft position timing over advanced. I could definitely see that being a potential problem. I don't know why we didn't set that code right now. Fuel pressure regulation valve, misfire codes, and then May 7th we have some misfire codes. Again, P0016, so that was there again, and 11. So correlation and camshaft position bank 1 timing over advanced or system performance. So 11 and 16. And then there it is, 16 again. So this is definitely helpful. It definitely caused misfires in all the cylinders. 16 and 11. I guess this is the same scan here. And then 27th, this was 2 days ago, we again have a 16 and 11, 79, implausible signal. That's probably an effect, not a cause. Okay. So again, I think we have to focus on the 16 and 11. So let's go back to our scanner, and I want to see if there are any bidirectional controls here for this camshaft. Codes only, functional tests, actuator tests. Oh, okay, here we go. Intake camshaft adjustment bank 1. Let's just try it. Before continuing, ensure that ignition is on, engine's off. Well, we want to try it with the engine on. It's probably going to kick me out. Let's see, start. This is not not very helpful then. You just look at the little spinny thing. By the way, this is version 17.2, Jim. This is the latest and greatest Snap-on Vera software. So I don't have that on my scanner yet. And that's it, exit. Test complete.
Let's try that test with it all.
Yeah, we can shut the engine off and see if it clicks. Okay, engine's off. Continue. Start. Negative response. Service not supported in active session. Well, that's fun. Is that what you got before, Jim? Oh. So there's the option is there, but you didn't want to do it. So visually inspecting this thing, here's their phaser on the intake camshaft. That's the only one that has a variable position. We have just 2 wires here. So I think if we're smart enough about this, we can manually energize that valve or the solenoid and see if the car runs poorly like it did in the beginning. I think that's a reasonable thing to check. So in this case, we can just unhook it and hook up our own power supply and just briefly touch it to battery voltage and see what happens, see if the car runs exactly like it did before, and that way we'll confirm the failure of the phaser or whatever solenoid's in here. Alright, so we got our phaser unplugged, 2 adapters from the AES Wave adapter kit, and right here we can just go straight battery power, battery ground. So what I'm going to do is just briefly touch this on battery power and see if this clicks. Okay, so now we're going to run the car, energize it briefly, and see if it does the same, bad misfire, shutter, etc. So let's start it up. Maybe we'll even set the same codes. Alright, here we go. So it runs fine now. That's pretty much like it was running before. And let it go. Runs good. Try again. Good. Okay, that's promising. Now let's go back to our OBD2 data and look at the map and see if it's acting exactly the same way as it was when it was cold. So in OBD2 mode, it actually has not set any trouble codes yet, surprisingly. Let's customize our display. Deselect all. Let's look at, let's see, fuel system 1. Intake air, map. Short term, long term. O2 voltages, equivalence ratio. Alrighty. That should be good. Okay. And the only danger here is if we energize this thing and let it sit there, if that phaser isn't meant to take full current all the time, if it's only a pulse width modulated current, we might have to put this through a test light to cut down on the amperage a little bit. So here's the current data right now. Hook this up. There's our map, high as it was before, exactly the same actually. We're still in closed loop. And our fuel trims are not bad. 0 and minus 10, minus 11. Okay. And that's good. So I think we're pretty much there. I just want to see how much current this phaser draws, and that'll be a recommended repair. Replacing the whatever makes this camshaft advance or retard. Funny story. The shop owner told me that this customer actually took it to a dealership, and they recommended to change the timing belt, I think, and quoted them $2,700. Kicker is, this thing doesn't even have a timing belt. It's a timing chain. You can see it through the oil cap. So the question is, if they okayed the repair at the dealership, A, what would they do? B, what would they charge? C, what if they didn't fix the problem? What would happen then? Just wondering. But anyways, just a couple final quick experiments, and we'll be out of here. Okay, so with 0 amps right now, let's put it on. About 1.7 amps. There we go. I'm doing the same thing. It sounds the same. Exactly the same. So if we can reproduce the symptoms exactly, we found our problem. This intake camshaft, for some reason, is sticking advanced, and you know, mechanically, because electrically, everything's fine. There are no codes for you know, wiring or short to ground, short to power. So that's going to be the recommendation. I appreciate you guys watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.